It wasn't.
You intentionally?
No, I did not intentionally hurt her.
Okay, then we need to know what happened. Okay, there's a
We
big
had
difference.
sex, and she did get freaky.
Okay.
When that sex, it got rough. Like she nice and right.
I know.
I choked her. She told me to choke her. I choked her, and then she kind of stopped, and she was limp. So I stopped, and I'm like, and I started tapping her face, and
On the night of October 26th, 2014, a Halloween celebration in rural Monroe County, Michigan, would mark the beginning of a tragedy that would haunt a small community for years to come. Music echoed through the countryside. Bonfires burned into the early hours of the morning. Hundreds of costumed partygoers came and went, many intoxicated, many anonymous. By sunrise, most would return home nursing hangovers and fading memories. But one young woman would never make it back. Her name was Chelsea Ellen Brookie. Chelsea Brookie lived in the quiet village of Maybe, Michigan, a farming community of fewer than 600 residents spread across just 2 square miles. It was the kind of place where neighbors knew one another, where life moved slowly, and where serious crime felt distant and unlikely. At 22 years old, Chelsea lived with her family on their 160-acre farm. Friends and relatives described her as warm, kind-hearted, and quietly funny. She was the youngest of 5 siblings, part of what her sisters affectionately called the Brooke girls. Though shy at first, Chelsea had a playful personality and a contagious smile once she felt comfortable. She was known for her optimism, her humor, and her ability to make people feel at ease. Chelsea worked as a hostess at Olga's Kitchen, a restaurant in the Mall of Monroe, where she had been employed for 4 years. Outside of work, she enjoyed listening to musical soundtracks, playing video games, reading, and baking. Food, in particular, was her passion. She dreamed of attending college to earn a culinary degree and hoped to build a future doing what she loved most. By all accounts, Chelsea's life was stable, supportive, and full of promise. That promise came to a sudden halt on the night of a Halloween party. Approximately 15 minutes from Maybe, in Frenchtown Township, musician Michael Williams, lead singer of the rock band Pickaxe Preacher, hosted his annual Halloween bash on his rural property. What began as a local gathering quickly escalated into something far larger. Live bands performed throughout the night. Fire breathers entertained crowds near a massive bonfire. Alcohol and drugs circulated freely. Security guards and parking attendants were hired, but even the host underestimated the scale of the event. Over 600 people would attend, more than the entire population of Chelsea's hometown. Chelsea and her friends were excited to go. Halloween meant costumes, laughter, and a chance to let loose. Chelsea spent hours crafting a poison ivy costume, complete with a leaf-covered top, black pants, and a long purple wig. She arrived at the party with her best friend Rebecca, full of anticipation. At approximately 1:30 a.m., Chelsea posed for a photograph. In the image, she is smiling broadly, holding a bottle labeled Poison, reportedly filled with cheap wine. The snapshot would later become one of the last confirmed images of her alive. Witness accounts of Chelsea's condition that night varied. Some said she was drinking heavily, swept up in the party atmosphere. Others insisted she appeared relatively sober and in control. As with many nights clouded by alcohol, memories would later prove unreliable and inconsistent.
It hurt. When you hit your nose, it kind of stings.
Sure.
I kind of babied her a little bit, like, oh, you're going to be okay. She wanted to go home right then. I'm like, it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. Just drink a little bit. It'll go away, And after a minute or two, she was fine, and she was back enjoying the party.
At some point, Chelsea accidentally walked into a wooden post, cutting her forehead. Afterward, she reportedly began asking several people for a ride home. Her phone was not with her. She had left it in Rebecca's car because her costume offered nowhere to store it. Rebecca left briefly to retrieve the phone, instructing Chelsea to stay where she was. When Rebecca returned, Chelsea was gone. Another friend who had agreed to give Chelsea a ride searched for her, but failed to locate her. In the chaos of the party, crowds moving constantly, people leaving in different vehicles, her absence did not immediately raise alarm. It was assumed she may have found another ride or left with someone she knew. By morning, however, concern turned to fear. Chelsea never returned home. Her phone remained unreachable. Her bedroom was untouched. As the hours passed, her family contacted the police. Chelsea Brooke was officially reported missing. Detectives quickly focused on the Halloween party as the last place she had been seen. The location raised troubling questions. The property was remote, surrounded by rural roads and farmland. It was not somewhere a person could easily walk home from, especially without a phone. Chelsea's house was roughly 8 miles away. Investigators arrived to find the aftermath of the massive gathering. The house was trashed. Bottles and cans littered the ground. The remnants of the bonfire still smoldered. Michael Williams cooperated fully with authorities. He stated that he did not know Chelsea personally and had been unaware of her presence at the party, a believable claim, given the sheer number of attendees.
Yeah, there's some guilt. That's why, I've been doing everything I can to cooperate with everybody. I'm extremely sorry. I've been posting about it on Facebook. I've been trying to make an awareness about it. Hope to God that they find her. Honestly, it looks like a lot of people that I know. That's like the kind of look now, with the glasses and the hair. So it's really hard. I even told, like I said, I told the authorities that I had no idea who it could be. I tried to talk to the mother. She didn't really want to talk to me. I think she's kind of upset with me in a way, which I understand.
He expressed deep remorse and guilt, acknowledging that while he had planned for a large crowd, he had not anticipated anything of that magnitude. Search efforts began almost immediately. Law enforcement deployed K-9 units, drones, helicopters, and hundreds of volunteers to comb the property and surrounding areas. Cornfields, wooded sections, and nearby roads were searched extensively. Despite the massive response, progress was slow. The investigation faced major obstacles. Many partygoers were heavily intoxicated, and their recollections were unreliable. Some witnesses believed they had seen Chelsea crying outside, worried about how she would get home. Others claimed they saw her leaving around 3 a.m. with a man wearing a dark hoodie and thick-rimmed glasses. Police released a composite sketch of the unidentified man. Tips poured in, but none led to immediate answers. False leads further complicated the case. One man, Harlan Bird, fabricated an elaborate story about helping Chelsea escape harassment by 2 men. He was later arrested for lying to police. Another individual falsely accused her boyfriend of murder and was also charged for providing false information. Months passed with no sign of Chelsea. The community rallied behind her family. A Facebook page titled "Help Find Chelsea Brooke" gained over 12,000 members. More than 1 million flyers bearing her face were distributed. Searches extended beyond Michigan, even crossing international borders. Milestones came and went painfully. Chelsea's 23rd birthday passed without celebration. Her sister's wedding was held with an empty space where Chelsea should have stood. Then, 6 months after her disappearance, a break finally came. A red shoe was discovered in a field a few miles from the party. It belonged to Chelsea. Soon after, part of her poison ivy costume was found at an industrial site. The clothing was torn, weathered, and stained with blood. Forensic testing revealed Chelsea's blood and the DNA of an unknown male. The search was no longer just for a missing person. It had become a homicide investigation. In April 2015, nearly 6 months after Chelsea Brooke vanished, the case took its darkest turn. Construction workers were excavating an abandoned property near old railroad tracks in Ash Township, approximately 10 miles from the Halloween party, when something caught one worker's attention. Among the dirt and debris, he noticed strands of blonde hair. Instantly recognizing what it might be, he stopped work and contacted authorities. The remains belonged to Chelsea Brooke. Her body had been placed in a shallow grave, naked, and covered with branches in an apparent attempt to conceal it. For the community that had clung desperately to hope, the discovery was devastating. Purple ribbons that once symbolized belief in her safe return now marked collective grief. The medical examiner concluded that Chelsea had died from blunt force trauma to the head. Her injuries were severe. Her nose, jaw, and eye sockets were fractured, and several teeth were chipped. The examiner stated that the damage was far too extensive to have been caused by fists alone, indicating the use of a blunt object. Importantly, the examiner emphasized that Chelsea did not die from strangulation. With confirmation of homicide, the investigation intensified. Investigators revisited the clothing discovered earlier near an industrial site. Though heavily degraded by time and exposure, forensic testing had already identified two critical findings: Chelsea's blood and DNA belonging to an unknown male. The rips in the costume, particularly at the straps and crotch, were inconsistent with someone removing it voluntarily. Experts later testified that the tears appeared to be caused by someone forcibly ripping the fabric away. The location where the costume was found was also significant. It was close to the residence of Harlan Bird's grandmother, the same man who had previously lied to police. Bird was re-interviewed, submitted to a polygraph examination, and provided a DNA sample. Though the proximity raised suspicion, his DNA did not match the profile found on Chelsea's clothing. For months, the identity of the DNA contributor remained a mystery. Then, in a twist of circumstance, the suspect quite literally walked into law enforcement custody. In 2016, a 27-year-old man named Daniel Clay, a resident of Newport, Michigan, was arrested on an unrelated theft charge. Due to a recently enacted law, he was required to submit a DNA sample. When that sample was processed, it produced a match. The DNA found on Chelsea Brooks' costume belonged to Daniel Clay. Clay had an extensive criminal history, including convictions for drug possession, theft, breaking and entering, assault, and resisting police. Even more alarming, just 1 month before Chelsea disappeared, a woman had reported that Clay had sexually assaulted and raped her in an apartment. Detectives brought Clay in for questioning. Initially, he denied knowing Chelsea or ever interacting with her. He admitted attending the Halloween party and acknowledged that he had been drinking and using drugs that night. He claimed to remember having sex with a woman in his car, but insisted that it could not have been Chelsea. When confronted with the DNA evidence, Clay said it was impossible. Investigators pressed harder. They explained precisely where his DNA had been found, on torn sections of Chelsea's clothing, where force had clearly been used. His denials began to falter. In a strategic move, detectives falsely told Clay that Chelsea had a medical condition that made her bones fragile, suggesting that her death could have been an accident. The tactic worked. Clay responded emotionally, drawing parallels to his own health issues, and gradually shifted his story. Eventually, he admitted that Chelsea was the woman he had been with that night. Clay claimed that he had driven past Chelsea as she stood alone by the roadside and offered her a ride home. According to him, what followed was a consensual sexual encounter in his car. He alleged that Chelsea requested rough sex and asked him to choke her. He stated that he complied briefly, after which she became unresponsive. Panicking, he claimed he attempted CPR but failed. He insisted her death was accidental. However, his explanation unraveled under scrutiny. Clay admitted that instead of seeking help, he drove around for 30 to 45 minutes, then transported Chelsea's body to a remote wooded area near railroad tracks. There, he carried her into the woods and left her body, later covering it with branches. The story directly contradicted forensic findings. Medical experts testified that choking for 20 to 30 seconds would not cause death. The injuries to Chelsea's face and skull were consistent with repeated blunt force trauma, not an accident. The damage to her clothing indicated a violent sexual assault, not consensual activity. Clay was arrested and charged with second-degree murder, criminal sexual conduct, and concealment of a body. The murder charge was later elevated to open murder, allowing the jury to determine the degree. As the case moved toward trial, additional evidence emerged. Clay's girlfriend at the time told police that he had confessed to her from jail, again claiming it was an accident. His ex-partner, who shared a child with him and had worked with Chelsea, revealed that on the day of his arrest, Clay left voicemails apologizing and stating that he had messed up big time and would be gone for a long time. In May 2017, nearly 2.5 years after Chelsea disappeared, the trial began. Forensic experts detailed the condition of Chelsea's remains and the violent nature of her injuries. They explained that the rips in her costume were consistent with someone tearing at the fabric using keys or forceful gripping. Clay's DNA was found not only on the costume but also on the purple wig Chelsea had worn that night. The defense argued that Chelsea's death resulted from consensual rough sex gone wrong. Friends and family firmly rejected this narrative. One of Chelsea's close friends testified that Chelsea had never expressed an interest in violent or aggressive sexual behavior. Clay chose to testify in his own defense. He admitted causing Chelsea's death, but maintained that he had never intended to kill her. The jury was left with one central question: was Chelsea Brooks' death an accident or a murder committed during a violent felony? After only a few hours of deliberation, the verdict was delivered. Daniel Clay was found not guilty of premeditated first-degree murder, but guilty of first-degree felony murder. The jury concluded that Chelsea was killed while Clay was committing another felony, sexual assault or kidnapping. His claim of consent was fully rejected. In court, Chelsea's mother, Leandra Brooke, delivered a statement that left the room in silence. Wearing purple, Chelsea's favorite color, she told Clay that she forgave him. She handed him a Bible and explained that forgiveness was not for him, but for her own peace. The judge was far less forgiving. He described Clay as a liar, a rapist, and a killer, calling his actions brutal, degrading, and predatory. Daniel Clay was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole for Chelsea Brooks' murder. He later received an additional 40 to 75 years for the earlier sexual assault. His appeals were denied. In Chelsea's memory, a scholarship was established in her name for students pursuing culinary arts at Monroe County Community College, the path she never had the chance to follow. Chelsea Brooke went to a Halloween party expecting laughter, music, and a safe ride home. Instead, she encountered a predator hiding among the crowd. Her case stands as a chilling reminder. Danger does not always announce itself. Sometimes it offers a ride, a smile, and a promise of safety. And sometimes monsters wear no mask at all.